Up, Ignited Marriage Tribe? Happy Thursday morning. It's July 1st. The year is halfway over. Can you believe that? That is just insane. I feel like just yesterday it was New Year's. But here we are, July 1st, and I hope you're ready for it. Listen, I want to tell you the story about Louis Zamperini. Maybe you've heard the story, but this dude grew up, he was kind of a troubled youth. He had difficulties, man. He was not a great kid. He certainly was not a role model. But he was fast. He learned to go run track, and he was fast, and he actually made it to the Olympics. And even though he didn't win an Olympic medal, the race that he was in, his last lap, he was lightning fast at like 56 seconds, to the degree that it got the attention of Adolf Hitler, who wanted to meet him. So this was prior to the war, and Adolf Hitler wanted to meet him, and he's like, oh yeah, you're the kid with the fast finish. So he was noticeable. Well, then, as life would have it, he's in the military, and he is on a bomber, a B-24, I think it was. He's on a bomber flying over the Pacific. They have mechanical problems, and they crash. And guys, like 11 guys died. This is a story of survival and tenacity. And this dude gets picked up after 30 or 40 days. They wash up on a shore, get taken prisoners by the Japanese military. They're POWs for the next 2 years until the war ends. It was rough. And my point is, when this guy was in the middle of this, can you just imagine your plane going down into the Pacific, and those last few seconds, you don't think you're going to survive. You guys are crashing in the water. And then even after you're there, just the difficulty of trying to capture some food and use it as bait and fish and survive, that will to survive just takes over. And yet I think about Louis Zamperini, and I think about how when he was in the middle of all that, he did not have any clue that he was going to have a story to tell, that his difficulties, that the things that he did not want to go through in the moment that were hard, getting beaten by guards in this POW camp, he had no clue that decades later, there would be a book and a movie written about this guy. They would talk about his drawing into God, his faith developing as a result of what he had gone through and difficulties that he faced even after the war. He took up drinking. How could you not? Like, you want to numb that pain. You don't want to remember that stuff. But then decades later, right, we hear the story about Louis Zamperini, and we're inspired. We learn about his tenacity and his grit. And I also think about poor Dave Ramsey. You've heard of him. He's the financial guru, Financial Peace University. Dave Ramsey in the 80s, when he was going through bankruptcy, right? When creditors were calling him up going, you are worthless. You're a piece of poop. You haven't paid us. You're such a welch. And he's getting these calls, and he's just overwhelmed by the stress. Who knew that decades later he would guide millions of people to being debt-free and actually having financial peace in their lives? When we're in the middle of the struggle, we do not see 10, 15, 20 years down the road how that might be used to impact other people. I had my own opiate addiction 17 years ago. I was trying to get treatment under the radar. I didn't want anybody to know. So much shame and guilt and feeling like a failure. And now I have an office where I reach people who are struggling that same way, and I can share that with them. I can be vulnerable so that they know that I'm safe. And marriage, man, I've blown up some marriages. That's why you and I are talking. No one would have thought, when I was dealing with infidelity in my second marriage, my third marriage, that years later, God's going to use this in my life so that I can reach people whose marriages are hurting. We don't see that when we're in the struggle, when the storm's there and we're just battening down the hatches. We're trying to hold on to survive. We're trying not to die. We don't see it. We can't even breathe. We have no idea how good can come out of the problems that we're facing that are done to us, or the problems that we're causing. Hello? I've caused my share of problems and hurt. And I never realized that God could use that to allow me to impact other people. But here we are, you and I are chatting, and I'm trying to give you my experiences, the stuff that I've learned from grad school about marriage counseling, the stuff that I've learned from reading books, the stuff that I've learned from life, and having other wise people speak truth into my life when I was struggling. What about you? What's your struggle right now? Are you having difficulty even staying afloat? You feel like you're drowning? It's hard to even come up for air? How might that be used? How might your struggle in your marriage, your struggle at work, your struggle with raising kids, your struggle with addiction, how might that be used in the future to impact other people? Maybe just to impact your own children, your own family. You know, I've been through things in my life a lot because of my bad decisions. I've been through things that it will allow me to speak truth and wisdom into the lives of my children that I would never had if I was just in calm seas all my life. What's that life? Calm seas. I don't know that I want that. You know, life is hard, but I love the growth. I don't like going through it. I don't like being placed into the fire and just molten steel of me being pounded and shaped into something stronger. It's unpleasant. Hebrews says that any discipline is unpleasant at the time, but in the end yields a harvest of righteousness. And I hope that my experience in this space will help you. You know, Gary Thomas wrote a book called Sacred Marriage. The tagline is, maybe marriage isn't to make you happy, but to make you holy. And maybe holy is not really part of your vocabulary. You're not a Christ follower. That's okay. I think that marriage, it's a mirror to who we are. If I'm living alone, I don't even know that I'm selfish, right? But man, make me share a bed with another human being and be present in her life all the time. That pride, that selfishness, that ego, that resentment, that unforgiveness, man, it is brought to the surface. And I think only when those things are exposed in us, when they come to light, can we actually deal with them if we choose to? Can we actually deal with them so that those character flaws disappear or become less? I'm never going to be perfect, not in this world. But at least God can use Megan and the truth that she can speak to me in such a way that I see some of my defects, and then I can address them and work on them. Because you know what that's going to do? That's going to promote an abundant life, calm, peace, joy in my marriage, in my life, in my relationships with my children, in my friendships, in my work environment. It's all affected. So what about you? Like, what are you facing right now? Give it to me in the comments, share it. What are you facing that maybe at some point becomes your legacy? I'm sure Dave Ramsey did not know that he was going to be the financial guru. He was broke. Man, he was poor. Went through bankruptcy and came out the other side, but he learned some stuff. And if you're willing to learn based on your struggles of what you face and you're willing to grow, you will have an impact. No doubt about that. But you have the option of not leaning into that, of not growing. You have the option of being a victim. You have the option of thinking that whatever's going on in your life is someone else's fault, and then you're powerless. You are powerless to change that situation when that's your view. So if you come meet with me about your marriage, if we do some coaching, you're not going to like me because I'm going to say the problem in your marriage is you. But the good thing is I'll tell your spouse the same thing. Because until we identify that the problem in my life is me, man, I'm just a victim. I'm just tossed about by the sea of life. The winds blow and I drift. That's no good. Listen, guys, your difficulty can become your legacy. Your story can transform other people's lives if you lean in and do the work. And I know that you can do it. You're on here watching this, trying to learn how to do marriage better. I hope it blesses you. I love you guys. Tune in tomorrow. I'll be back live tomorrow